was going to say, you mentioned Villa with Emery. Well, he's just signed his second new deal in a month.
Oh
They've just
wow,
signed him
yeah, yeah.
until 2029, and they've changed his position to manager because they're willing to just give him the keys basically and take over. And that, to me, that's what happens when you get the appointment right. And we've got it wrong. Trust me. Before we had Gerrard in just before, but
True.
we completely brought in as a name, thinking that he was going to get some sort of Klopp style football going. Then we've gone for the proper approach and brought in a real coach, and it's worked.
Do you think that's because of a change of direction from the board? Do you think they've actually thought, hang on, we need to give him a bit more control, and that's when he's agreed to be like, yeah, I can commit to that. I can.
I'm not sure if it's a change in direction from the board. I think they've been willing to do that for a while. I just think it's as a result of the success that he's had. Like, if you look earlier in the season, they invested heavily in Unai Emery's team in Spain that he was invested in. They obviously are buying into the project. Emery's son was on the bench for Villa in the last game of the season. It's a partnership made in heaven, the club and Emery. It's the perfect level for him. He's kicking us on to something else. And I think when commercially they're trying to improve to kind of keep up with the way that he's built the playing side of the club up to, it makes perfect sense. Like, they've just signed this big partnership deal with Adidas. It's 150 years of the club this year. They've got themselves back into Europe. Well, in what world does this go? I don't want to say this now because you'll play this back to me. In what world does this go wrong? Like, why is Emery not at Villa in 5 years' time? The only reason is if he goes on to be at Real Madrid or somewhere like that. Because even if Emery got Villa to 10th next season, they're sticking with him. They're sticking with the process.
Yeah.
He could do that 3 years in a row, and I think they'd still stick with him. I honestly think that there's enough foresight there to go, this is the guy. And the more you can give him, the more that you tempt him to ignore approaches by teams like Bayern, because he's been there before and it's not worked out when he went to PSG, really. And now he's got something that he can build as his own. And changing that title from coach to manager seems like a confirmation of, we really trust you. Now have it.
Yeah. Do you know what? There's the positive, Myles. All this pod has been turning on a negative, and there he is. Talk about Villa, and there he is. But you're right. I think Villa is one of those clubs where they're so upwardly mobile at the minute. Everything they seem to do feels like a step in the right direction, and you can't question the decisions they're making at the minute. From the kit deal, qualifying for the Champions League, tying down a really sought after manager to a long-term deal. These are all such brilliant steps to make as a club. I really hope we see that kind of translated in the transfer market as well, Dave, don't you? Because if Villa can get that right again, because they've done it well in the last season, haven't they? Then we're looking at the makings of a great season, hopefully. Again, I don't want to jinx it, Myles, but yeah, it looks really positive.
It's all right.
I think, especially for Villa fans, if you look at the business they've done over the last couple of years, which I think fans could have only have dreamt of, really.
Yeah.
It's actually really exciting times. You just wonder what else is possible.
Well, do you know what's funny? I think a perfect sign of that is the excitement around. It looks like Ross Barkley's coming back. And it's funny because actually, if that had been a year ago, you'd have laughed at that. Like, when he finished his loan spell, there was no Villa fan going, yeah, definitely keep him. Gerrard will bring the best out of him, keep him. And then we go 2 years down the line. He's had a great time at Luton, obviously, which has really helped him. But you trust that Emery will get that side out of him.
100%.
And we'll bring him in. All of a sudden, it feels like a great signing and quite savvy. And that's what Villa have done really well. Yes, they spent big money on Diaby and Torres, but in between that, they've managed to get the clever signings done as well for much cheaper. Morgan Rogers, 8 million, absolute steal.
Brilliant,
when you consider it now. Tielemans and Kamara on free deals, brilliant transfer dealings. So it's nice to know that even if this summer we find ourselves a bit more restricted in budget, there are still smart buys out there. Like, it looks like we're going to bring Carlos Soler in from PSG. It looks like Hermoso's coming in from Atletico, both on free deals. So I trust that Emery will bring the best out of those players, and all of a sudden the squad's getting that depth that it needed.